Hi, this is Kim Pinkney and welcome to my channel. Today I am transferring onto parchment paper. I'm going to try using Cricut Infusible Inks on parchment paper. So I have taken one of my images that I had drawn with my Disney damsels, dangerously cute whatever series that I had. It's on my channel if you want to check out this, how I came up with this image. But it's the Princess and the Frog. And I had her being like the darker version of herself. But anyway, Tiana. As I'm tracing this, I was really excited about it because I always wondered how I would transfer a picture over, and it had, what is it, like I have to draw it backward, and I'm like, all I have to do is flip this. I've got this traced onto this page and I can, go to town on it. So I just pretty much traced the head and shoulders, flipped it over, and using the Cricut Invisible markers I started to outline it. I did not know about the Cricut Infusible markers is that, or how they would react on this parchment paper. They reacted beautifully. I liked how I could blend these guys. Like if I had a light color and I had another color with it, it would get darker or color change a little bit. So that gave me hope that I could probably do some blending. I decided to add color as much as I can in order to get, just to see how far I could go with it. Now the thing I learned is that it beads up on top of the parchment paper, and it takes long, and because of that it takes to dry. And I figured beading and use a paintbrush and get it to kind of smear onto the parchment paper, and it gave it the layer effect, and I'm like, ooh, I can use this. So but when I put the colors onto the parchment paper, that fuchsia was on the bottom of her lip and red was on the top. That's as vibrant as it's going to get, but even when you're using the markers, they are darker than how they will appear. So here is where I discovered that I could do some, blending, and it wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna keep doing this, looky. So I take my paintbrush, and I thought it would be a little too dull the way it was, so I added another color on top, and that was the purple. See, I liked how it was doing its own thing, and I'm like, okay, if I can color in all the white as I can on this parchment paper, I might be able to do some interesting things. So what you see is what you get. It doesn't add, it doesn't do much else for you. Now on the other types of paper you couldn't do this. So I'm thinking I'm going to try doing the parchment paper again, and I figure that results weren't perfect. I could still go over it with, and I still intended to go over it with fabric markers. So this was just going to be something I was going to transfer over onto. Now on the Cricut Infusible, this stuff is permanent. It's not going to wash out. I figure it would be a nice base, even though the fabric markers don't wash out. They do fade over time, so I'm thinking this as a base would be an enhancement to fabric marks. I could. So what I need to keep in mind is when and then flip it over, my tracing needs to be nice and dark. And so the next time, make sure that I use a marker, like a pen, once I flip it over. Now some of the blendings weren't perfect. You can still purple, and you can still kind of see where they end and begin on the brim. And so what I decided to do is, in the future, I'm going to do like an in-between color. So I have the purple, I have the darker purple, and that might give me a better transition. Now the colors came out a lot darker because they don't dry prey on the paper. If you put your finger on it, it's come off. So my lines that I put on started to merge in with the image itself, and I didn't use any water to dilute my, I cleaned off brush into. So what I basically did is I cleaned my brush off on a tissue when I had to go on to another color. I should have did it a little bit more often. So what I wanted to do was try to get her cheeks to be kind of pinkish or lighter, more of a contour, but they kind of ended up a little muddy. And once it did kind of dry, it was kind of like a dull tone. It's but the colors are on there, and it will transfer. Now it seems like you can get away with making different colors and blending on here. They don't blend well, but I think it will blend ultimately. So the color I used on her skin was purple, and then I went over it with another color, maybe a little lighter color, because it was getting a little too, it was line colors, which the darker brown in her skin. Maybe I think I used gray, to darken the paprika. With the paprika again to get tone, I didn't want to do it. Like where the skull is, I tried to do like behind her neck, try to make it look like the hair behind. So I used like a little bit more black, and then I tried to go over that black, or I think I used like a dark gray, and then I tried to go over it with purple to kind of give it a different kind of tone. So kind of tone, but it didn't quite cross over. The black definitely, and going over black with in the darker colors with the paprika and stuff like that, it just kind of muddied her skin. It didn't enhance it. So her cheeks, instead of them being kind of a little reddish tone like that's on the rim of the hat or the band, it just came darker brown. So things I need to keep in mind: it doesn't dry quickly. It will come off on your fingers, which means it could spread somewhere onto your paper. Spreading could end up onto your shirt, so that's one thing to keep in mind. Colors will kind of mix together, so yellow and blue, red, green. So if you give it a little bit of time, it will dry enough so that you can maybe see underneath it. But again, and I my tracing to go tracing with like a black, so I can see it a little bit better, like I lost on the frog. And your image, you don't want to work with anything small than the tip of your, or else you're gonna get like a muddier image. Okay, image colored in. I decided to go ahead and bring it over to my workspace. And all the colors seem kind of dull right now, but in practice, all of the markers, however you put it onto the paper, will be a little bit dull. I'm still trying to adjust to make sure that I can see. Alrighty. Okay, there's our Tiana. And yeah, it looks dull, doesn't it? But when you use the infusible markers, they come out a lot more vibrant. If you've seen the other videos before this, you'd notice that they come out a lot more vibrant when they're transferred onto the shirt. So just looking for a little area to place onto the shirt, usually by smoothing it out a little bit, putting cardstock underneath, whatever heating pad that you're going to be using, smooth out, use a lint brush to walls and stuff, because you're thinking of longevity. But because this is just an experimental shirt, I skipped that step. So I pretty much just put my pad underneath with a cardstock. And I noticed that when I used the cardstock underneath the shirt, it didn't take on the image of it didn't bleed onto that cardstock. but it does bleed onto the top part. So right here I'm kind of warming it up for 14 seconds, 15 seconds, just kind of warming it up a bit. This is heat activated, so as soon as the marker paper hits the shirt, with the heat, it starts to do its work. So once you don't move it after that. I realized that my cardstock was a little pouch, so I moved it up above. That's why I'm still fussing with it a bit. Yeah, I didn't realize I had the pouch side up. So anyway, it's heated up, and I'm applying the picture. So my ultimate goal is to draw in color onto t-shirts for gifts and whatnot like that. Getting it with a fabric marker, finish. I've got a lot of fabric. I know of quite a few tricks and whatnot, and this is going to be what I imagine to be a very, very good time saver, because sometimes it's hit and miss. Sometimes you might mess up and things like that, but it makes it so much easier to just go ahead, get it to the halfway point. So this is what I consider like a halfway point, is transferring. So I have cardstock layered on top of my image, and I'm just pretty much resting on the Cricut machine. Sorry, words are hard on Monday. So I'm just kind of holding it down, and I'm going to hit this button for, I'm going to do 80 seconds. So I've got it set to 40, and I'm going to hit it for another 40 seconds. And then from there, I'm going to let it sit for like 15 minutes before I mess with anything. And apparently this stuff becomes a gas. So you can kind of smell it. It kind of stinks a bit. So you might want to have some good, air flow if you're doing a lot of these, or if you're doing a few of these. I did like 4 of these onto the shirt, and it lingers. It's just not something that in the air. So try to have some good ventilation when you can. Maybe have a fan on to try to get the stink out. And basically it turns into cools and becomes a solid. And the invisible markers work really well. If you've seen any of the other images that I tried drawing on different other shirts, you see the fumes, the heat rising off of this thing. I have it set to 385, so it's pretty hot, and so I just leave it 15 minutes or so, and just giving it time to cool. So I'm coming back to it. Now the heat press didn't bother anything else around it, except for when I had like a plastic transfer. And there, the sheet, and then I'm going to lift it up. Just want to give it a few seconds and lift it up. Okay, so I noticed that this happened before. Either I didn't let it sit long enough. It's on there, and it's going to be great once I add color for my fabric markers onto it. But it did do its job. It sucks that there's no brown in the set, but maybe in time they might come up with it. Paprika is the closest thing I got to brown. It's a warm brown, and mixing it gave me a darker brown. But I also used butter a bit, I think it is as well. Now up on top you can see the purple and the black, and that's an effect that you really have a hard time getting if you just use like laser paper, because once you put it on laser paper with Crayola markers, it'll start ripping up your paper because it's not used to having repeat uses. Even when you wait a little bit to let it dry, it still gives you a hard time. So looking at all the gradients that I tried to get, I tried to merge the colors and things like that, and I'm just checking out the differences between the two. And I like the effect that's on the brim of the hat or the band of the hat, but for some reason one little area just did not, you know, even though there's a lot of color on it, it just did not transfer over that well around where the frog is, and it should have been a lot darker. And I'm not sure exactly what happened. It could be the pad that I had underneath may have had a gap or something, I don't know. But you see how it came out much brighter than the image that was paper. Now, if only cardstock doesn't rip up too bad, and it's not a bad alternative to really get to layer those colors on. The parchment paper did a really good job. This is a nice base for what I need, and it's flat, smooth, and it's permanent. And it's easily, you can go over it really easy with the fabric markers, not a problem. I doubt if it'll reactivate with the fabric marker. I didn't see that happening, but it turned out pretty. It's not the best, but it's a good start for my intentions. So just to compare it to there, like this one right here is I think I have Bristol paper on one side. I have cardstock is the black and white one. That one there with the premium laser paper. It's much more vibrant, but I didn't get a lot of movement of color. There's another one that's got the laser paper, and the lines are a lot cleaner, but then again, I haven't colored that one yet. I did start with some of it, and colors are a lot brighter on that one than it is on this one, because I was using markers. So that is where we are thus far. If you guys like what you see, please like and subscribe, and let me know what you think. If you're going to try with parchment paper, it's a cheap alternative. You can probably get bigger images transferred over than 8.5 by 11, and it's more cleaner than drawing it onto the fabric by hand. So yeah, I probably will be using it in the future, especially to try to get a little bit more artistic with my blending, but don't expect too much out of these markers, because they do much better if you're not trying to merge your colors. If you just on one solid color, but definitely as a final if I'm trying to get a little artistic and stuff with it. Yeah, so like my finer details, I'll leave it to the because it's the parchment paper and I just wanted to transfer. I'll use laser paper for like outlines, but when I want to get like kind of creative, I think I'll do this again. I think I'll try this again with a lighter tone and stuff like that. But this is me trying to push the envelope. How many colors can I get on there? So maybe I'll try something with more of a rainbow tone and seeing if I can get transitions a little smoother than what I had. Because what you see is definitely what you get. It's not going to enhance it. It's down and dirty, and it just gets brighter, brighter than your original picture. So anyway, if you guys like what you see, please like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. Have a great one. Bye-bye.